so much, Andrew. I'm delighted to join you today to chat about the voice of the patient, hearing it, and understanding it. We're going to take a few minutes to look at how we have listened to patients in the past and how we're doing right now. We're also going to evaluate our efforts and look at how we can improve and when we can improve the voice of the patient in clinical trials. Before we look at hearing the voice of the patient, let's see what they care about. A clinical trial patient's primary objective is make me or keep me well. They want to make sure that their contribution is meaningful, that their participation in clinical trials, which is really a humanitarian act on their part, has an impact. They want it to be easy for them to participate in clinical trials. They want to know what's going on in a timely manner, receive feedback about how they're doing and about what their humanitarian effort is resulting in. They may need encouragement. They certainly don't want to have to travel or pay any more out-of-pocket costs than they need to. And they want to understand what's happening in their own language. And of course, minimizing their discomfort, especially if they're suffering, is something that we want to do in providing clinical trials, materials, and opportunities to them. Before we go further, I'd like to get your ideas about where clinical trial patient-reported outcomes are collected. So, Andrew, can I turn it back to you?
Thank you, Ann. Yes, we certainly can do that by launching a poll question here, and that is on the screen of the audience members right now. You can vote on this in real time by clicking on your screen. The question that we have, in 2014, what % of protocols include patient self-reported data? Is that 30%, 40%, 50%, 60%, or 70%? Again, you can vote on that in real time by clicking on your screen, and I encourage you to do so. That question again, in 2014, what % of protocols include patient self-reported data? Looks like most of you have voted at this point, so I'm going to close polling and share the results with you. And there we have it. The most popular answer was 30%. That was followed by 60%, 40%, then 50%, and just 9% of you said 70%. And with that, Ann, I'll turn the mic back to you.
All right, great. Thank you. So happy that we had the opportunity to ask that question, which says to me that this will actually be an informative presentation for you. So let's take a look at where patient-reported outcomes are actually used. A study that was published last year and which surveyed investigator sites indicated that about 60% of protocols had some element of patient self-report. Of that, the majority were using ePRO, but paper was still used in a fairly high number of trials. This information was actually validated when we used a terrific asset at Medidata, our PICUS database. PICUS has collected data from literally tens of thousands of protocols over the past several decades, and over 11,000 protocols since 2000. In reviewing those protocols for the period from 2010 to 2013, we found that 55% of protocols had some element of self-report. Going back to that survey that talked to sites, they were asked about their expectation for patient-reported outcomes, and they expect in every phase for the use of patient-reported outcomes to increase. Looking at the last 2 years as opposed to the next 2 years, the largest increase is anticipated for phase 1 trials, and the second largest increase for phase 4 trials. Again, going back to our PICUS database, we found that in the year 2000, about 40% of protocols had patient self-report, and that increased to around 50% starting in around 2003 for most of the next decade. But surprisingly, in 2013 and 2014, we saw some pretty dramatic increases in the percent of protocols that had an element of self-report. Let's take a look at this in the context of some significant events that happened during that time period. In 2002, in the British Medical Journal, Arthur Stone and his collaborators published a very significant paper that pointed out the unreliability of patient-reported outcomes.